everyone, Kristina here. Welcome to day 22 of the holiday card series for 2014. Today I'm going to be creating this shaker card, and I'm showing the card to you right now so you know exactly what I mean when I say shaker card. This is the first shaker card that I've ever created, if you can believe it, and I did a lot of research online for tips and tricks, and I'm going to share those with you along the way. So the first thing you need to do when you create a shaker card is create the actual foam frame that's going to contain the sequins or the beads or whatever you choose to put inside your shaker. And I chose to use this frame set from Simon Says Stamp. This is actually their Stitched Rectangles die set. And all of the dies come together connected by little tiny pieces of metal. And like most wafer thin dies, you would disconnect all of those dies by cutting the little connector pieces. But I kept those connector pieces in today just to make it a little bit easier to cut this frame perfectly. So I will cut them eventually, and you'll see that in the video here. But for now, since I'm cutting the frame, I kept those dies together. So this Easy Mount thin foam that I'm going to be using today is black, and it's thinner than regular Easy Mount foam that you might use to mount your unmounted stamps. And this was recommended to me by a few different people for creating a shaker card because the foam is adhesive on just one side and you can cut it using your wafer thin dies. So I'm going to be trimming off a piece of foam here that I'm going to run through my die cutting machine, and it's going to create the perfect foam frame for my shaker card. So today's video is actually rather lengthy, but I did want to include as much as I could about creating the shaker card area or the shaker area of the card so that if you do try this on your own, maybe you can avoid some of the pitfalls that I found and also just make it be a little bit more of a smooth process. So I'm putting my foam and my dies through my die cutting machine. I'm using the regular die cutting sandwich for a wafer thin die. So I'm just running that through, and it was kind of tough to put through, but it went through eventually. And this will cut the top sheet, the foam, and then it will not cut the backer sheet. So it keeps everything intact, which is nice. However, I am going to have to use an X-Acto knife and kind of release it from the outer area of the foam eventually, and I'll include that in the video as well. So I cut out the frame twice. I did this because some shaker cards that I've seen, they use a really thin foam and it doesn't allow the sequins or the pieces inside to move around freely. So I've cut two of those foam frames so that it could be a little bit deeper. So I also cut a frame out of some Nina Solar White cardstock, and that's going to be the frame that goes on top of the shaker area. I also need to create the backer of the shaker area. So I'm going to be cutting the outer die only, and I'm going to be separating these two dies right now. I'm using some wire snippers for beading. I actually ran over to my local craft store to buy some wire snippers so that I could separate these dies a little bit easier. In the past, I've just used some old scissors or simply bent the dies back and forth until those connectors broke. But since these frames were all connected, I knew it would be easier just to go get some wire cutters or wire snippers. So I'm cutting these apart, and I did want to mention that if you do use these snippers and cut apart those dies, be super careful because as you cut off the little connector points, they can go flying and they are very sharp and dangerous. So when I was cleaning up that die that was on the inside of the frame, because I did snip off those connectors, I actually put my hand over the top to catch any of those areas that would go flying, and one stuck into my hand and I was bleeding. So just be super, super careful. I'm now going to stamp the backer area, and I'm using 4 different colors of ink. These are just some really pretty colors that I thought would look nice with all the candies. And then I also threw in some smoke ink from Simon Says Stamp for a gray. So I used the frame that I cut, and I just made a little mark over on that side there so I knew exactly where that frame would be coming in. I did this because I started stamping on the backer sheet here that I've die cut, and then realized that some of the areas that I was stamping were going to be behind the frame, and so I had to turn it over and start stamping again. I didn't want that little joy tag to be under the frame, so that's why I had to start over. So I just stamped in all the different colors of ink, and filled in that area. I'm keeping that top right corner pretty clear of anything because I'm going to be putting a greeting on top, so just, it would be behind it anyway. Took my pencil and erased that line over on the side. And then I took a multi-liner from Copic, or just a black marker will do. And this is the 0.1 multi-liner. And I just drew in a little string that looped that joy tag onto the candy cane. And now I'm going to be creating the greeting area for the shaker card. And I wanted it to be the same color as that kind of corally color, which is Soft Cantaloupe from Hero Arts. So I pressed my ink pad onto some cardstock here so it would be the same color. And this ink really takes a long time to dry. It'll dry to the touch quickly, but it does keep its moisture. So I wanted it to be completely dry so that I could do some embossing on top. So I took my heat tool and just heat set that until I could tell that it was completely dry. And to test it out, I took out some white embossing powder and I just dipped that cardstock inside to make sure that the embossing powder was going to slide right off, and it worked out perfectly. So to prep the area for stamping, I took my EK Success powder tool and put a little powder over on top just in case. And then I stamped the little greeting from the stamp set in Versamark ink. The Versamark ink is super sticky and it's going to stick that powder to the area, and I'll get a really good clean embossed image or embossed greeting. So I'm using some Hero Arts white embossing powder, just applying that and shaking off the excess, and then heat setting that until it was completely melted. I trimmed down that greeting, and then I wanted to create a kind of a ribbon shape on the one end. So the way I do that is cut a vertical line up to the center and then connect the bottom corners with the top of that line I just cut. That's the easiest way that I've discovered to make these V-shaped edges for banners. So I'm going to set that greeting aside and I'm going to be working on the shaker area now. Now the foam, I knew that I could use that center area of the frame for other projects, so I wanted to make sure that I saved that. And because it didn't cut the backing sheet, I had to use my X-Acto knife to cut out that center area so that I could save that for later. So you can see how everything didn't cut all the way through, but I'm using my X-Acto knife. So I'm just trimming that out and making sure that I can use that center area piece for a card in the future. And once I had everything cut apart, I was able to peel off that frame, and I'm putting it directly on top of the backer sheet. I'm being super, super careful and lining up one corner first, and then I'll kind of slide it over and line up the second corner. And then I'm going to be lining up the third bottom corner and pressing that down lightly, and then allowing that last corner to fall, and it should be in the perfect spot and it won't be overhanging any of that backer area. So after I had the first frame on, I needed to apply the second. So I peeled off the top sheet on the first foam frame and peeled off the back sheet on the second. And now I'm very carefully putting these together because they're super, super sticky and I'm not going to be able to pull them apart if I press down too much of it. So I'm being very careful as I apply these. Once again, I'm starting in one corner and going to the other corner, and then I'll start pressing everything down. Now you could definitely use some easy mount foam tape, or not some easy mount foam tape, just some foam tape like my 3M foam tape you'll see here in a minute. You could definitely use that and make your own foam frame, especially if it's just square. But I did want to try it out with these die cut frames today. So I've got all that area. Now I'm going to take my powder tool and go around the foam all along the edges because some of that adhesive is still sticking on the sides and it's kind of sticky. I don't want the sequins to stick to the foam. I want everything to be able to move around easily and freely within the shaker area. So I'm adding quite a bit of powder and making sure it's liberally covered with the powder and getting rid of any of the stickiness. And then I'm going to be picking out some different sequins colors. I used a bunch of sequins. Some were from Pretty Pink Posh, some were just other random companies. Unfortunately, I don't have all of my sequins labeled, so I can't tell you exactly what colors I used, but Simon Says Stamp has a ton of sequins you can choose from, and you could just use whatever colors you'd like. So I have a few sequins in there and I'm just shaking it around to see how many I have in there. I have seen some that have a lot of sequins and I didn't want to put that many in. So I have these clear plastic sheets from Lifestyle Crafts. I've had them for a while, and I'm just cutting out that outer area again. This is going to be the window area that locks in all of the sequins inside the shaker. So I've got that interior piece and it's going to go right over the top. So now I'll peel off the backing on the front. Now here's a tip for you. This surface is cling. It's not adhesive. So you are going to have to put a little bit of adhesive on top of this foam before you put the plastic on. I didn't do that and I had to go back and do it later. So I just peeled it off and then you put your adhesive down and then put your plastic on. Now this stuck enough when I first applied it that it was okay, but later when I realized it was cling, I went back and adhered it down. So the shaker is almost done, almost completely made. You can see everything shaking around inside, and the last thing to do is just put that white frame on top. Now if I had some white foam, I probably would have used that, but I only had black and it turned out okay. It wasn't a huge deal, but I probably would have used white if I had it. So I'm going to put this white frame right on top, and that just makes everything look nice and clean. And the shaker area of the card is completely created now. So I'm going to work on the rest of the card, and the first thing I'm going to do is work on the card base. I have some surf blue cardstock here from Simon Says Stamp. I'm just going to temporarily adhere that down to a craft sheet, and I'm going to be using some embossing paste and a stencil. The stencil I'm using today is the Tiny Dots stencil from Simon, and this is a brand new stencil that came out just a few days ago as well. I'm taping that down to keep that in place while I work. And I'm going to be using some Dreamweaver translucent embossing paste today. It's going to go on and look white, but as it dries, it turns completely clear. It's a really cool embossing paste. And it's a really smooth consistency also. Some embossing pastes almost have a more buttercream texture or like frosting. This texture is more like toothpaste, or even like a really smooth custard or pudding. It's really, really smooth, and it can go on rather thin as well. So I'm just applying that over the entire stencil card area, and then I'll go over it one more time and scrape off all of the excess. I want it to be pretty thin so that it dries quickly. So I'll scrape that off, and then I'll remove the stencil. And when I peel it up, you'll see all those little tiny dots. It's a really cool stencil. So I went and cleaned off my stencil, and just with some water and a little bit of soap and a nail brush, actually, that cleans up the stencil really nice. And with the card, I took my finger and just cleaned up those edges and then set it aside to dry. This is going to take, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes to dry completely until all of the dots are clear. You'll know that it's dry when everything's completely clear. While that's drying, I took my greeting area and I wrapped some lawn fawn twine around it, just around the top area, and then trimmed off the tails of the bow. And then turned it over and put some foam tape on the back. This is that foam tape that I was talking about earlier that if you wanted to, you could create your shaker card with. You would just use scissors to make the edges really clean and make sure it lined up with all of your paper. So I glued that onto the top of the shaker card, or the shaker area, and now it's ready to adhere to the front of the card. All of the dots are pretty much dry. Everything in the center, there's just a few at the very top that were a little bit thicker that were still drying, but I knew it was okay to start adhering. I put some Tombow extreme adhesive on the back of that shaker area, and then put that directly onto the front of the card. And this is going to be the complete card here. I'm going to show you up close again what it looks like with everything shaking inside. And I think it turned out really, really good, especially for being my first shaker card. I think next time I might try cutting out some little stars and hearts and include those inside the shaker card as well. I think it's just a really fun way to create a special card for someone. And it is a thicker card, so you might not want to send it through the mail because it could get a little squished. So I'm going to reserve this for someone that I will be giving the card to in person. So that's the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will be back tomorrow for a video for the new Simon Says Stamp card kit, and then on Wednesday with a video for the holiday card series. Until then, thanks for watching. On screen right now are 5 additional card videos for you to check out. They're from the 5 previous years of the holiday card series. So if you're looking for some additional holiday card inspiration, you can click on any of those and it will take you directly to that video. You can visit my blog at kwarnerdesign.com, and please hit that subscribe button in the top corner and also give this video a big thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.